Singer Ian Watkins, who was jailed for child sex offences, has been killed in an attack in prison.
Before we begin, allow us to express our deepest sympathies to the victims of the crimes you're about to hear about, and to all victims across the world. 1997 would be the year that changed Ian David Watkins' life forever. The year that would see him and his band, Lostprophets, begin their journey to mega stardom. Within a few short years, they'd go from playing small-town gigs to huge arenas, earning the Welsh band an army of fans in the process. By the mid-2000s, Watkins and his band had cemented themselves in the world of popular music. But underneath the surface, the other band members had a feeling about Watkins and his life away from the spotlight. In the band's later years, his drug abuse had become a huge problem, and the group were no longer as close as they once were. Watkins had distanced himself from his fellow musicians, even going as far as to request a separate dressing room. They assumed this was because of his drug use, but they never discovered the true extent of what was really going on, until 2012, when their band and their world would fall apart, exposing one of Britain's most depraved sexual predators.
Now, the former lead singer with the Welsh rock group Lostprophets has pleaded guilty to a string of sex offences.
The warning signs didn't just come from Watkins' fellow band members, they also came from one of his ex-girlfriends. She was so unnerved by her experience with Watkins that she contacted the police in 2008. She'd made some serious allegations, from his erratic behaviour to his worsening drug problems, but it was the messages he'd sent her that raised the most alarming red flags. They appeared to show a sexual interest of the worst possible kind. These messages involved children.
He began telling me about all the underage fans that he took the virginity of, and he was proud of it.
Despite her reports, the police didn't act on the information. They ignored her pleas again in 2009, again in 2011, and again in 2012, even though she contacted them over 5 times between March and June of 2012. She even took his laptop into Doncaster police station, telling officers it contained disturbing images of the most twisted sexual nature. But the police declined to view the images and sent her on her way. She tried again, with the same result. On her 3rd visit, officers finally viewed the images, but even then, they did nothing. When Watkins's dark and twisted lifestyle was finally uncovered, it was down to an unrelated report about his insatiable appetite for drugs. South Wales police raided his home in Pontypridd, Wales, in December 2012 as part of an investigation dating back to June of the same year. He'd already been arrested and bailed out on drug offences after being accused of smuggling drugs from Los Angeles. But Watkins didn't realise that police were about to confiscate his electronic devices, and on those devices they would uncover evidence of some of the worst crimes ever seen against children, and those crimes had been committed by Watkins himself.
This investigation has uncovered the most shocking and harrowing evidence I've ever seen. There is no doubt in my mind that Ian Watkins has exploited his celebrity status.
The crimes themselves won't be detailed here out of respect for the victims, but they were among the most serious imaginable. Offences that included infants as young as 11 months old. But Watkins wasn't alone. When the details finally emerged, it was revealed that he'd had help from 2 women who had involved their own children in the most depraved ways possible. It began when Watkins met a 19-year-old fan of Lostprophets in 2011. She had a 10-month-old baby boy. They began exchanging messages, and Watkins used them to manipulate his victim and gain access to her child. By April 2012, they had agreed to meet in person, and she was going to bring the baby with her. They'd already discussed vile acts in explicit detail, and when Watkins had the young fan and her baby alone in a hotel room, He carried out the most shocking crimes imaginable. Then, in August 2019, Watkins met another fan, this one with a baby girl. The child's mother agreed to move in with Watkins, letting him do whatever he wanted to her daughter. He even talked about getting the child hooked on drugs from an early age, making her more susceptible to his crimes. And the mother agreed. On the 19th of December 2012, Watkins was formally charged with 13 separate offences relating to children, sending shockwaves through the music world and leaving fans of the band heartbroken. When news broke, Lostprophets cancelled all their tour dates, and on October 1st, 2013, the remaining members announced they were disbanding. Watkins wasn't even mentioned in their statement. The evidence against Watkins was damning, and shocked even the most experienced police officers. Investigators uncovered a staggering 27 terabytes of data from computers and devices in his possession. But there was more to it than that. Watkins was determined to act out his darkest desires, fueled by a life of drugs and alcohol. He openly said that he had no limits, and wasn't even sure what he was capable of himself. His descent into darkness was likely fueled by his addiction and the ego that came with fame. Watkins wouldn't be the first famous musician to fall into a life of drugs and depravity, but he was, by far, the worst. In late November 2013, at Cardiff Crown Court, Ian Watkins pleaded guilty to multiple charges that are too disturbing to detail. On the 18th of December 2013, Judge Mr. Justice Royce sentenced him to 29 years imprisonment, followed by a further 6 years on licence. Judge Royce described the crimes as new depths of depravity.
He was barely audible, offering guilty pleas to a series of horrific sexual offences, including the attempted rape of a boy who was just 11 months old.
Watkins was first remanded at HMP Park and later transferred to Britain's largest maximum security prison, HMP Wakefield in West Yorkshire, otherwise known as Monster Mansion. It has housed some of Britain's most violent criminals, including Charles Bronson and Harold Shipman. If those names aren't familiar to you, search them up. It will help you understand the level of prisoner HMP Wakefield holds. Although Watkins kept to himself, it's alleged he never expressed remorse for his crimes or for the victims who suffered. He even continued to manipulate his position as a frontman, even from behind bars, somehow managing to maintain a fan base even after his crimes were exposed. It's claimed Watkins had over 600 pages of letters from fans, many including marriage proposals and dark sexual fantasies. This left many wondering how anyone could worship such a sick individual who would manipulate anyone he could every chance he got. But his life in prison was also a life of constant fear. He realised he was a marked man before he even stepped foot inside a cell. Because of his notoriety, everyone knew who he was and what he'd done. In August of 2019, Watkins was caught with a mobile phone, claiming 2 inmates had forced him to hold onto it so they could contact women outside. In truth, Watkins had been using it to contact an ex-girlfriend. That woman had been communicating with him through official prison channels, but when she received a text message from an unknown number, she immediately contacted the authorities. Watkins maintained that other prisoners had forced him to have the phone, but the court gave him an additional 10 months on top of his sentence. Then, in August 2023, another shocking incident occurred. Watkins was stabbed and reportedly taken hostage by 3 other inmates in a standoff that lasted for 6 hours. Officers in riot gear used smoke grenades during the rescue and eventually freed him. His injuries were judged as not life-threatening, but the message was clear. Watkins wasn't safe. His prison sentence mirrored the severity of his crimes. Even with protection, he was targeted, isolated, and constantly living in fear. And on October 11th, 2025, a call went out from HMP Wakefield. A prisoner had been attacked.
Singer Ian Watkins, who was jailed for child sex offences, has been killed in an attack in prison. The former Lostprophets singer, who was convicted in 2013, was attacked in Wakefield prison.
When officers arrived, they found Ian Watkins dead at the scene. Police from the West Yorkshire Homicide and Major Inquiry Team were called in. 2 inmates, Rashid Geddle and Samuel Dodsworth, were arrested and charged with his murder. The case was sent to Leeds Crown Court. Although the exact sequence of events remains under investigation, initial reports suggest Watkins was stabbed with a sharp instrument during an unlocked movement period. But rumours persist that he was killed over a drug debt of around £900. Let us know what you think about this case in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can keep up with the next exciting case on Caught and Convicted. And remember, although incidents like this do happen, they're not as common as you might think. So please, don't let this case keep you awake at night.